about 11:35 or so. Looks like we got most people here. So let's go ahead and dive in on this. So once again, I'm Jesse. I'm here with Jameson Morris. We both work here at CrateJoy, helping our merchants become more successful. Um, just to remind you, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's the go-to webinar control panel. Please ask us any questions that you have. Looks like we got one so far. It looks like someone was having trouble hearing anything. Let us know, Lindsay, if you can hear us now. We were just muted for a second as we got ready for the webinar here. So what we're talking about today is pricing your subscription box. This might sound kind of like a kind of a minute, detail, this kind of a minutia you have to work through, this kind of like really boring thing you have to do when starting your subscription service, but it's actually really, really important for lots of different reasons. And we're going to go through these reasons today and provide some advice on how you can price your subscription box intelligently to make sure that you're making profit, that you've got room to be making great boxes, and that the customer experience is going to be great because of that. Quick overview. Today we're going to be looking at some core metrics. When pricing your subscription box, it's really important to know these metrics, to know what they stand for, and to know how they operate in your own business. These metrics include COGS, ARPU, net profit margin. In addition to that, we're also going to be talking about some pricing psychology, just kind of appealing to the consumer mind and avoiding simple mistakes. We'll also be providing some action items that you can do today to develop a price, analyze maybe your current price if you have a price already, or at least plan out some new prices for some new products or offerings you might provide in the future or with another business. And lastly, we're going to learn about why pricing is so important. Like I said, it might kind of seem like minutia to work through this, but it is a really important process of starting your business, and it's something that should be done as early as possible. This is.
Yeah, I would also add it's literally something that can make or break your business.
Mhm.
And even for Jesse and I's very first subscription business, we later realized, 2 years down the road that we had really underpriced the product, and really just, a difference of $5 would have completely changed the outcome of that business. So
Mhm.
pricing is, other than product, I would say pricing is like the second most important thing that you need to nail before you launch your business. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons we've dedicated an entire webinar for this topic.
Right, and to kind of illustrate that, so you can kind of look at this. This is kind of a silly, stupid cartoon that I decided to include, but it kind of shows you, like, you can't just sit there and sitting there with low sales, low profits, and expect something to just fix itself. A lot of this has to do with pricing. This cartoon says, "What if we don't change anything at all, and something magical just happens?" Fact of the matter is, probably something magical isn't going to happen. You need to plan from the onset to to really establish a good product with a good price. Um, so step one, kind of before we start, this is what I mentioned right at the beginning of the webinar. So some of you might have missed this. We have some great free tools at CrateJoy. These are some really powerful calculators that you won't find anywhere else. There's two calculators. One's a subscription box calculator, and another one's a shipping cost calculator, and both of those calculators have a power version of them, which basically allows you to do more customization with your figures. But I would definitely suggest trying these out. They're at start.cratejoy.com/subscription commerce tools. You can just Google subscription box calculator. It'll show right up. And these are really useful. I mean, they're not going to plan your business out for you, but they are going to be helpful in your cash planning and at least understanding like how to calculate your costs. So definitely check these out. They're totally free, of course. So.
Yeah, if anything, it gives you a good list of items to expect in terms of what your cost of goods are. It lists obvious things like shipping and packaging and fulfillment. There's a couple other things though that people tend to forget that should be included in your COGS. So definitely a great resource.
Right. Yep. So this is just a kind of a quick definition slide here. So we spoke a little bit earlier about metrics. What should we focus on? What do they mean? If you heard those things and you didn't know what the definition was, not a big deal. These are things that you'll learn over time. I'll take a couple of these, and then I'll let Jameson explain some of the other ones. COGS just means cost of goods sold. This is the cost to produce your product. So, the actual cost of your products, maybe the packing material, um, your fulfillment costs, everything you need basically to create your good. Then there's the gross margin. This is the dollar value left after your price is subtracted by your COGS. So this is not your profit, because you have other expenses obviously for your business. And your profit is your net profit margin. So after you've subtracted your COGS and then subtracted all your other expenses like hosting or platform fees like from CrateJoy or transaction fees, then you're left with a net profit margin. Um, these other ones here, ARPU, just as another acronym, average revenue per transaction or per unit. This is just the average amount that's taken upon checkout. Um, so the average dollar amount that's coming out of your cart page. Um, COCA, cost of customer acquisition. This is just the dollar cost to find a customer, and then churn rate, the rate at which subscribers cancel. So there's no need to memorize these right now. These are just some terms and some metrics that would probably be useful. Um, Probably be useful to when planning your price out. Okay, cool. So let's jump right into this. Step one for pricing. It really depends on your cost of goods, and you can't be pricing your subscription with something with a price that's not going to cover the actual cost to cover your product. I mean, this is very intuitive, probably, but you want to first determine what is it actually going to cost you to bring this product to market. And so this kind of involves, what model does your box operate under? Are you going to be relying on free samples, or are you going to be purchasing product? Um,
Yeah, I'll add to that one, that first one there. If you do plan on, obtaining and procuring free samples occasionally, or if that's going to be part of your model, I definitely suggest building your pricing, assuming the worst case scenario that you will never be able to procure free product, or assuming it becomes harder than you thought it was. So build your pricing with the thought in mind that you may have to purchase all the product in the box. And if you are able to get free samples, that's just a cherry on top each month. It gives you a little bit extra cash. But I know I've talked to thousands of vendors, and I know that, starting at least a year and a half ago, they just were so overwhelmed by companies requesting donations. So you can get free products, great, but I don't recommend building your business relying on that.
Yeah, and so that's obviously going to play a huge part into your cost of goods. Like Jameson said, he does not suggest relying on free samples, and I do not suggest it either. I mean, it's just much easier to build a great product, and a great monthly box for your customers if you're actually purchasing the products. And obviously, this webinar is not focused on procurement. That webinar is actually going to be coming in about 2 weeks. But that's something you want to consider when you're determining your cost of goods. And also, remember, keep in mind that your cost of goods is going to include other costs, and not just the cost of your products. That deals with fulfillment costs. So that's packing and shipping. Your packing materials, your packing list that you include in the box, maybe tissue paper, any other type of expenses that come up for actually creating your product. And so to calculate your
And
cost. Oh, go ahead,
don't
Jim.
leave out, I mean, also, yeah, don't leave out customer acquisition costs. I notice a lot of people are building their pricing and sort of just assuming that they're going to be able to get, low to no cost customers. And you will get a lot of those, especially in the very beginning, but you have to plan for customer acquisition costs, potentially being a bigger thing for you in the future. Because as you grow, it gets harder and harder to get customers, and you're definitely going to want to, be thinking about customer acquisition costs from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to determine your COGS, there's a small little equation here. You can see it about in the center of the slide here. COGS equals product cost plus fulfillment cost. So the cost of your products and the cost to actually fulfill that order for a customer. So an example would be, this is just a very rough example, but take a product cost. Let's say you want to spend $10 on your box. You want to be at 5 or so items, and you want to spend $2 on each item or something like that. take that product cost, add it to fulfillment costs. So maybe it's like $5 or $6 for shipping, a dollar for tissue paper and a dollar for packing or something like that. And you get $18 of COGS. You know, does this mean that your price is going to be $19 so you can make a dollar profit? Definitely not. Like this is not the end of the equation. This is just to get the bare bones. You need to this should this is the bare bone cost that you've got to cover. And you can really see that in this next slide here when we you talk about desired margins. Determining COGS is only step one. That's just the value you need to reach in order to cover the production of your product. You want to choose a margin that leaves room for overhead and profit. And when we mean overhead, I see some people asking some questions like operational costs. And what about these other costs that are associated with the business? You're thinking the right thing right now. There are going to be other expenses not included in your COGS, like platform fees, accounting costs, web development. Like Jameson mentioned, cost of customer acquisition is absolutely huge. It's something that you really need to be really focused on, and a lot of people just don't seem to focus on it. That's going to be a big part of your where your cash flow is going to. It's going to be acquiring new customers, especially as you scale and grow past your first year. You want to include a price with a margin that covers these expenses, plus is going to provide you profit so you can pay yourself. So we advise COGS should be representative of about 45 to 55% of your total price. So here's the equation. Here's that $18 from the last slide. Divided by 55% gives you a suggested price around $32. So that allows for your gross margin that's going to cover your costs, cover your other costs not associated with COGS, and provide a little profit. And keep in mind here that gross margin is different than net profit margin. Gross margin is just the margin you have after COGS have been taken out of the equation. There are still other operational costs that we talked about, cost of customer acquisition, and all of those things. Once they're taken out, then you get net profit margin.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast the overhead expenses add up. When I'm starting one of these businesses, it's you'll kind of do that fun back of the napkin math, where you're like, okay, if I sell 1,000 boxes, I'll get $10 a box. But when you get into the business, there's all these little things that add up. You're paying for a Zendesk, your customer service app. You're paying, maybe you have a sales CRM to keep track of the vendors. That costs money. Maybe you're using maybe you have a bookkeeper, maybe you have a customer service contractor. You've got MailChimp, you've got Google Apps, your email. So all those little things, those little expenses, it's crazy how fast they add up. So those are things that you want to make sure you have room for, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to pay yourself, and it's not a very fun business anymore. So
Yeah, exactly. And as a part of that too, like besides these other operational costs, like 3227 is just not a fun number. Like you don't want to just take some raw mathematical equation of here are my COGS, here's the gross margin I need. Now here's my price. Jameson's kind of illustrated some different prices here. If your price is in the low 30s, just round up to $34.99, or down to $29.99 if it's pretty close. I mean, a dollar or two isn't going to really affect your gross margins, but the psychological nature of that price is going to be more appealing than something like 3227. Same thing as if your price is in the high 30s. Round it up for $39.99 or run it down to $34.99. So yeah, here you go. If you're taking that equation, instead price it at $34.99, and there's a couple of different reasons to do this. Which I think probably is one of the favorite reasons to do this of both Jameson and mine, is because you can offer something like a 10% off for life discount off a price like $34.99, a nice rounded price, and then still have good margins and still be above the margins that you want to be hitting based on your COGS. So it's a rounded number, and people respond to these way more than odd numbers. And there's a huge difference in conversion rate. I mean, if you price your box at $32.27, you're not going to get as many customers as if you price it at $34.99. They've done tons of studies about this where they've offered deals for the same product for less, and people consistently choose numbers that have nines in them for whatever reason. It's just kind of like this psychological thing that we're not comfortable paying $100 for a service, but we'll pay $99.99 to it. It's just this kind of consumer mind that we have. We just want to look like there is some type of savings, that it's easy to calculate, that it doesn't feel like a very large number, and kind of including 99 cents always kind of helps kind of reinforce that. Um,
Yeah, and then also to add on your point about creating a higher retail price than what people are actually paying. Jesse and I, with all of our recent businesses, will create an artificially high retail price, and then by default, we'll give everybody a lifetime discount. And that's good because if everyone's getting the same discount, no one's going to try to game your business. So, like a lot of times with Conscious Box, actually, we discovered this was our first business. At one point, we had over 2,000 people that were canceling and resubscribing every month to take advantage of new discounts. So if you offer the same lifetime discount to everyone, that basically prevents it from happening. Also, if you have an artificially high retail price that none of your customers are actually paying, when you go to do like a deal with Groupon or Living Social, you'll be able to show them like, no, hey, look, our retail price is this, right? So you have a higher starting point to negotiate commissions and discounts with Groupon and Living Social as well. So there's a couple benefits to just starting with a higher price, even if that's not what your customers are going to be paying.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to echo that really quickly here because like Jameson mentioned with our first business, at that time I was managing the customer support department for that, and it was just crazy. The fact just even if it was for $1 or $2, people would be canceling their accounts just to resubscribe for just a small discount. And then when we launched our next business, we knew we had to curb that problem. We thought to ourselves like, how can we make sure that people feel like they're getting a good deal without actually always having to provide a new discount every single month. And so that's when we decided, hey, let's create a slightly artificially high retail price and then give people a sizable discount, like 10 or 20% off each month. That way, everybody gets that sensation of, I got a deal. And that, increased conversion rates. It keeps people happy. The other really cool thing about it too is occasionally you're going to get the customer who somehow does not see that built-in discount, and they'll be paying the full price. And then, they might, when they cancel, it's easy for you to pitch them, hey, let me give you 20% off a month. Or when they just write in, you can even just say to them, hey, I was taking a look at your account and I noticed that you didn't have our lifetime discount applied to it. I want to apply that to your account for you. And then they're like, wow, this is really great. Like this service really cares about their customers. I just had a really good experience because this person wanted to give me a discount. So it becomes a very easy tool for you to improve customer experience. And to like Jameson said, have more flexible margins from the get-go. So be sure to appeal to proper pricing in this paradigm that we've been talking about. Um, and with this price determined, you've taken your COGS, you've taken the margins you want to get, you've taken the net profit margin you want to get. You really begin now to be able to calculate your average revenue per transaction, project your COGS, and factor in your churn, and then really know what your cash flow is probably going to look like each month. I want to say I do see these questions coming through, about how do you get a rough idea of starting out with customer acquisition costs, and how do we factor in these operational costs? Some ways to kind of project these things is to take the margins that we've illustrated already. Like take your COGS and assume that you want that to represent 45% of your total price to customers, and then take these calculations here and say, okay, if my transaction total, let me first find out my ARPU before I start thinking about cost of customer acquisition. You take the cost of your box, the transaction total, and then you minus your processing fees from it. Your platform fees like your Cratejoy, I think it's like 10 cents per transaction. And then you get, maybe it's like, instead of $39.99 at that point, it's actually $37.58. And then you can say, well, I've still got, $9 of margin, or profit margin after my operational costs. This is how I can start to determine my early coca. I don't want to be spending more than $10 per customer in a paradigm like that, because then I'm coming out of pocket. So it's, kind of look at these different equations here. I mean, these aren't like set in stone. It's going to really depend on your box. But the idea is that by starting with a strong early price point, you'll insulate yourself from things that would normally take away from your business if you didn't have a good price point, like processing fees, like $10 to $15 customer acquisition costs, and more importantly, like churn too. Once you determine and got your business launch and you're looking at your churn, your total canceled subscribers in a given period, if you want to grow, you now know that you need to, get those total canceled subscribers, maybe it's 20 people, and then some to actually grow your business. And if you know that, your price allows for about $10 of customer acquisition costs while still allowing you to cover your own costs, then you know that you can spend about $250 or so on customer acquisition and hopefully get those 25 customers. So like I said, these are some pretty rough, estimations here that we're providing you, but it's supposed to just illustrate a picture of why pricing is so important. Um, Jameson, you want to add anything as far as these calculations and how price plays into that?
Yeah, I'm betting that there's a handful of you guys who've already set your prices. You know, th- the answer to that is, I mean, like if you've got under 100 customers, and you're still fairly small and starting out, I would rip the bandit off now. If you feel like you've underpriced, I would just do it as soon as you can. Send your customers a note explaining them why you're doing it and how this is going to make the business more sustainable. You're going to be able to get them a higher quality product each month. Um, I would just, if you feel like you've underpriced, don't wait. Fix your pricing as soon as you can.
Yeah, and I mean it's really important to do that because of things like cost of customer acquisition. Because like Jameson said, outside of your first couple months, when there's this pre-launch early buzz around your business, which a lot of businesses will see, it really starts to become an uphill battle to be finding new customers. I mean, you've got to be going pretty hard on free to low cost customer acquisition strategies in order to grow. And if you don't want to be doing, low to no cost customer acquisition, you want to make sure that you have a margin to be acquiring customers at a decent rate. I mean, I think that, and Jameson, you tell me about your experience, but I think that $10 to $15 for customer acquisition cost, depending on the price of your box, is a pretty good range. Um, it really depends, but it generally, like from the experience that I've seen and the anecdotal, evidence that I've heard, that's kind of be a range that you should probably expect for just about any service. I've seen.
Up to about $40.
Right.
My subscription Yogi Surprise customers will pay anywhere between 35 and about $39, and it costs me about 15 to $20 to acquire a customer now. When I started, it was costing me 10, but the cost will rise over time. Right. So when I am acquiring customers aggressively on something like Facebook, yeah, I'm paying about 15 to $20. I don't actually break even until the second month. So those customers have to stick around for at least 2 or 3 months for me to actually make money on them. But that's expected. I mean, a lot of the big subscription brands their customer acquisition costs get really high, and they'll have to wait 4 or 5 months before that customer actually starts becoming profitable.
Mhm,
But customer acquisition is a different subject for another time. We can go into that in more detail later.
mhm. So here are some other questions that we hear a lot, and that we definitely want to address, just in case these questions weren't asked. So Jameson, why can't I just copy or beat my competitors' prices? Why can't I do
Well,
that?
well, look, we've noticed that like 9 times out of 10, a lot of times your competitors have also priced incorrectly. There was a point a couple of years ago when there were a lot of subscription boxes that were going out of business, and it was mainly because they were copying some of the more established players on their pricing and just figuring, oh, well, I got to at least match or beat their price, but their competitors were priced incorrectly as well. So it kind of created this not very virtuous circle. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
yeah, and part of that too is, every business is different. You can't. There's just no easy way to take a magnifying glass to your competitor's business and be like, okay, they chose this price because this is their cost to get that product, and this is their packaging cost, and this is their fulfillment cost. Like they hopefully, we should hope for their business's sake that those people did the same calculations we did around COGS and transaction fees and customer acquisition costs, and that's how they came up with their price. But I think it's kind of like Jameson said, probably 9 times out of 10, they probably didn't do the extra footwork that's necessary to actually price super intelligently, and that's why a lot of businesses like this were going out of business. So just as a general rule of thumb, just forget about your competitors. Come up with your own pricing structure. figure out what you're going to need to price your box at in order to provide a substantial and compelling product offering, and that's all you really need to worry about. Um, this kind of ties into the third question here: the lower the price, the better, right? Definitely not. It just doesn't matter if it's a low price or a high price necessarily. It matters if it's the right price for the offering that you're getting. Lower priced things in general, are going to attract customers who are less committal. They're going to look and say, oh, I can sign up for the service that's $9 a month, and if I don't like it, I can cancel pretty quickly. It's fine. And in that respect, it might be easier to acquire customers, but they're not going to be as sticky of customers. When I mean sticky, I mean they're not going to stay around as long. They're going to fly away from your business more often because they're not really invested in the experience. Both Jameson and I, our first business was priced at $19 a month, and now both of our current businesses are priced at $39 and $49 respectively. Or about that with discounts and stuff like that. So like that just gives you a sense of the experience. Like we've more than doubled our costs in some cases to customers because even though it might be harder for us to find customers with a higher price, they are more qualified customers and they value the experience more because they're more vested in it because they spent more money on it. Um, um,
Yeah,
uh,
well said.
yeah. Anything you want to add to that lower price thing, Jameson?
No, no, I mean, you're totally right. I just think in general the higher price points tend to draw in more affluent customers.
Yeah. So another question we get a lot too, which personally I'm kind of um, ambivalent about is multi-month plans. Should I offer multi-month plans? Why or why not? What about for gifts? Without getting into gifts, I'll let Jameson answer that part because he's got a great answer for it. But in terms of just multi-month plans for your regular subscription, it's not a bad idea. Personally, I only offer monthly subscriptions because of ease of cash flow. It's really easy for me to know what's coming with rebilling. I don't have tons of different variants in rebilling, and so I don't have to constantly try to recalculate what cash is coming in on the rebilling day. And for that reason alone, I don't include multi-month plans. Admittedly, my current side business here, Prosperly, it's just a side business. Like I'm not spending a lot of time on it. And if I were spending more time on it, maybe I would do multi-month plans because I'd have more time to devote myself to cash planning. But in my situation right now, it's just easier to do monthly. The reason why you should do multi-month plans though is because it gives you more cash. I mean, you can do 3, 6, 12 month plans, right into your terms maybe that they can't, cancel after 3 months or something like that. And then you've got a nice bit of cash that you can use for customer acquisition, that you can use to do really cool things with. The one thing you got to keep in mind though is that you have to realize that revenue at the right time. You're going to be accountable for fulfilling those costs down the road. So you can't just take someone's 6 month subscription. Maybe they paid $100 for 6 months, and then you spend, $80, $90 of that, and then next month comes around and you're like, oh crap, why can't I afford shipping? It's because you spent all of your margins already. So that's the other thing about multi-month planning. I mean, you've got to get pretty crisp on your cash planning and pretty crisp on realizing revenue at the right time. Um, for your
Yeah,
business.
you have to be really diligent with accounting, or you could get into a pretty sticky situation for sure. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I'll add to the reason I don't offer multi-month plans for normal subscriptions, not gift subscriptions. The reason I don't do it is because so the nice thing about them, especially if you sell a 6 month one, is you've instantly locked in 6 months of value, which is cool, right? But I think it's usually capped at that, right? Because like when you after 6 months, right, when it rebills, that's a huge charge, and a lot of times it's going to be a surprise for that customer. Whereas if you were paying $40 a month, it's more likely you're going to get 12 months out of that customer than when the 6 month one rebills because they're just so surprised by the big charge they weren't expecting, right? So I also, for simplicity reasons, just like Jesse, only offer a monthly recurring subscription. Um, yeah, it makes cash planning easier. I mean, at the end of the month, whatever money's left over is your profit. It's yours, right? You don't have to be as, crazy diligent about cash planning. Um, Although I do offer multi-month gift memberships, but I don't offer a 1 month gift membership. The reason I don't do that is because if you offer a 1 month gift membership, a lot of times you'll get a normal person who's not trying to buy a gift buying your gift subscription because they don't want it to rebill. So I don't offer the 1 month for that reason. I don't like them gaming my system. If they're not trying to give a gift, they should get the recurring subscription, right? So my gift memberships start at 3 months. I do 3, 6, and 12.
Mhm.
And I do have to be diligent about cash planning with those guys, but it's a little easier with the gifts.
Um, yeah, that's one thing I'm definitely trying to get around to. I think that multi-month gifts are a great idea. You shouldn't just think to yourself, well, multi-month plans, it sounds hard. These guys think it's hard. I shouldn't do it. Definitely look into it. Um, uh, because like Jameson said, the great thing about doing multi-month gifts is that you know a gift is naturally going to just be, if you just have a one single month gift, that person just, it's very unlikely that person's going to renew if they bought it for themselves. Um, or it's very unlikely the person that they gifted it to was probably going to sign up. I mean, it's there's a potential, but I think it's just much lower. And then by doing 3, 6, or 12-month gifts, you have built in retention almost. That person's going to be with you for a long time where they might not otherwise be. Um, so that's just kind of some notes about multi-month plans here. I just want to touch base with everybody here. We do see your questions, and once we get through these, we're going to give you a quick assignment, and then we'll start answering your questions here. So just keep them coming if you have any more questions at the top of your head. Um, so this next kind of but what about question we provided you with was, my margins are going to get better as I grow. So why don't I just plan to have low profit margins when I'm right out of the gate? Um, yes, your margins will get better as you grow, probably, but that alone is not a very good reason to have low profit margins. I mean, you ultimately you don't really know. It really depends on your niche. It's very difficult to take an assumption like that and then project it out 6 months down the line with some imaginary number and be like, well, hopefully by the time I have 1,000 customers, I have such purchasing power that I can get my products down to this amount. Um, a lot of conjecture is involved there, and I can tell you that with specifically with the niche that Prosperly works in. I work with a lot of handmade artisan local businesses. Um, I don't really expect my margins to get much better. I expect them to get better, but not significantly better by the nature of my products. So this kind of this kind of question doesn't necessarily apply to every single business that's being started.
Yeah, and you're not going to see a significant improvement in your margins until you're, at the 1,000 to 2,000 subscriber mark. I think in terms of like negotiating power with vendors when you're purchasing product, I think I hear a lot of times that's the biggest struggle is, I've only got 20 boxes to fulfill. That's not a big order for the vendor. Um, yeah, I mean I think that's where you can see the most improvement. I think, around 100 to 500 subscribers, that's a decent enough volume to where vendors will be more willing to give you a bigger break. When you're under 100 subscribers, you've either got to get really good at your sales pitch and basically tell them like, look, I guarantee I'll come back for a future order. Here's what I'm trying to do. Really try to get squeezed to get below that wholesale price, get closer to their cost. Jesse has a lot of success on Etsy because Etsy sellers are inherently smaller businesses, and for them, ordering 25 units or 50 units is a really big order for them, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I love using Etsy because it fits the niche of my business. A lot of the vendors on Etsy don't have experience doing wholesale pricing, so it's easy to negotiate with them because I can say, hey, here's kind of the norm because I'm pretty familiar with it. And it's a really good value proposition for them for the service that Prosperly provides. I mean, not only putting the products in the hands of customers, but also I do a lot of cool social marketing for them each month. Take pictures of their products for them. I try to provide a little bit more of this hybridized marketing suite for them, so they're like more inclined to give me their products at cost. That's what I try to push down to. And because I know that I'm trying to push down to cost from my current size right now, and with only a couple hundred customers, I know that it's going to be pretty unlikely for me to probably get below cost on many things in the future. Which is why I price my subscription the way I have, to make sure that I have the margin spend, $15, $20 per box to get a really nice product offering from people, and give customers a really great experience. And even when I'm at, 1, 2, 3,000 subscribers, I don't really expect those costs to really change dramatically. Maybe a little bit, which will, equate to hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars each month. But from the beginning, like I'm not going to be focused on that. That's going to be upside for me, 6 months down the road. I'm just focused on right now making sure my pricing model works today. Day one, I want my pricing model to work for me and not work against me. And this kind of plays into the next question, which is related. What if the products you source have an inherently low margin? You know, should should you still shoot for that same margin that we've suggested to you? Um, and that's a great question. I mean, that's something you want to be thinking about when choosing the products for your niche, and choosing your pricing structure. I mean, if you're going to be sourcing products that are going to have a low margin and therefore it's going to cost you more to buy them from vendors, um, that's something that you need to consider in your pricing model, and to make sure that you still have enough room to make a great box, and even to make a great box if you have a hard month finding a good vendor. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have a niche that has low margins for your products. It's just it's just something that you're going to have to pay attention to.
It usually means that you have to have a slightly different value proposition because, right, the issue is, so first of all, I would say yes, you should shoot for 45 to 50% gross margin too, even if your niche is inherently low margin, right? By doing that, I would say, well, you need to raise your price to make sure that you have that margin in there, right? But then if you raise your price, you can't really use the retail value proposition, right? A lot of times people like to advertise you're going to get at least double what you paid for, right? So there's kind of that balance that's a little tricky. So if you're doing something really high end, that has low margins, or you're doing food, which has low margins usually, and you need to raise your price up to a point where you have enough margin in there, 45-50% to work with. It may be that you can't really use the retail value
Mhm.
proposition. You may need to have a different value proposition.
Yeah, and there's lots of other value propositions that are out there. I mean, you don't need to be saying I guarantee this retail value every single month. Like that sounds great and that's pretty compelling to a lot of people. But I mean, there are some businesses out there who have comparable prices to my own box, who advertise a lower value or don't advertise a value at all, but consistently put out boxes with a lower retail value, and they still have lots of customers. I mean, you could just totally ignore the whole idea of value and just talk about discovery. Maybe your niche is finding the best vegan beauty products or something crazy like that, where it's just like you're going to be finding brands that you will not find in stores normally, and that is really compelling to the audience. I mean, a really committed, passionate vegan would love to discover new brands and probably wouldn't be adding up the total each month as much as someone who is signed up for a service that's advertising a value. So, like Jameson said, just think about your value proposition to customers and how you communicate that, and you can work your way around a niche that has an inherently low margin. Um, so, what are you waiting for? Go price your subscription box. I've given you some good tools. I've given you hopefully some good advice. Uh, Now's the time to sit down, try to determine your COGS, think about how much you want to spend per box. Think about calculate your transaction fees, your processing fees, your platform fees. Get an Excel sheet. Put all these costs into it, and really start to plan this out. So here's an assignment for you. It's November 18th today. It's almost Thanksgiving, so happy early Thanksgiving, everybody. But by the end of the week, you should have a good price in mind. Definitely go use Creature's free tools. You should be able to answer, Jesse, my COGS is blank. Jesse, my ARPU would be blank. Jesse, my net profit margin would be blank. Like these are things that you should be answering in a single sentence. Jameson is going to give you a call. No, not really, but and he's going to ask you these things. What are you going to tell him in a couple of days? You want to have that attitude when you do this assignment, because if you do have that attitude and you do have those answers when it comes to launching your subscription or launching a new product or changing your price for your current subscription, you're gonna have the right headspace. So choose a number, make a product in your Craigjoy store, and get yourself launched. Um, uh, Next up, we want to do this Q&A here. So we've got quite a lot of questions. We're we're going to go just from the top. We can probably make through all these. We've got about 20 minutes left here. Um, so this first question, and I'll read these off here so everybody can hear them, and then Jameson and I will kind of tag team each question. And the first question it says, do you find that it's better to advertise the retail value of the box or not to? Um, so that's a great question. I mean, we kind of just went over that. It really depends on the value proposition to customers. I personally do. I know that Jameson does. We did it with our last business. But we've also, our first business, which was scaled to, very, thousands and thousands of customers, we didn't really advertise retail value. It really just depends on the value proposition to customers. What do you think about that, Jameson?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on if it's something that you can consistently perform on, which I can with Yogi Surprise. I always have at least a $70 or $80 retail value. Um, I wanted to just give you guys a super transparent look at my cost of goods. I think this will answer a lot of questions I'm seeing in here. So I get about $35 to $38 per customer every month. I spend 15 of those dollars on products. I usually will only spend $2 to $4 is my absolute max that I'll ever spend on a single product. Most of the products I buy for the box cost $2 or $3, and I usually put about 6 products in the box, right? And so it's a combination of food items, some yoga lifestyle products, but I've gotten really good at negotiating. A lot of times I'll pay cost, even just share costs. A lot of times I'll never pay wholesale. I always get distributor pricing, which is usually the next best price in the offer. Um, I've actually written a guide on my blog on how to do procurement and negotiating, where I've actually included some scripts that I use in my emails. So yeah, the negotiating part is really key. I do have the volume now. I'm buying thousands of units, but I was able to get sort of the same kind of prices when I was at 500 to 1,000 customers. It was a reasonable enough order that I could really drive that down. But I could actually spend up to $20 and still be profitable if I had to do that. So I knew going into it, if I wasn't going to grow as fast, that I needed a little bit more room for products. So $15 to $20 was always reserved there for products. Shipping. Someone has asked here, do you guys offer free shipping? Is that built into your price? Yes, we always offer free shipping. It's not an additional thing that's tacked onto it. Shipping is built into my cost of goods. My cost for shipping averages at about $6, depending on the location that it's going to. I use cubic pricing, which is built into CreateJoy's platform. I have my box printed to fit the maximum dimensions that you can get into the lowest, most cost-effective tier for cubic priority mail. And then Jesse and I both use a company called Northwest Paper Box in Portland, Oregon, who does our fulfillment and custom packaging. The fulfillment for my box costs about $1.15, and that includes all the touches, the 6 products, the packaging, the tissue paper, the tape, and the postage that goes on top. So they charge by the touch for fulfillment, about $1.15 there. My box costs about 80 cents. I print 8,000 of them at a time. I don't pay for them all at once though. They're cool because they only charge as I use them, which is nice. So they'll print a big order to save me money on volume, but then only charge me as I use them, which is really cool. And a lot of times smaller vendors, new vendors can make those same deals. So that's actually approachable for everyone. But yeah, anyways, just a little deeper look.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I would my whole pricing structure is very similar to Jameson's. In fact, it's almost identical, except that my box costs about $5 more to customers, and I spend about $5 more on products. But besides that, I mean, the costs are very very similar. I think the estimation Jameson provided for cost of products is just spot on. I mean, $2 to $4 usually for a good product that's going to retail for maybe 3 to 4 times as much as that is a pretty good estimation. I see a question here. How do you, basically get less than 50% off retail, which is usually wholesale, to the vendor? I think if you're having trouble getting less than 50% off the retail price, and I can totally understand how that can affect the value of your box. It might just be the size of your subscription right now, but it might be also how you are approaching your vendors. Make sure that you're. This is a great opportunity for companies. I mean, subscription boxes, they're relatively new. They're a pretty novel product idea for a lot of people. A lot of people who get subscription boxes are really, really excited about the products that they're receiving. I mean, they're subscribing to your service, and unless you are making your own products, I mean, they're subscribing to find other people's products. And so be enthused when you talk to vendors and say, this is a great way to get your product in the hands of hundreds or thousands of people who are looking for your type of product. And because we do this marketing thing for you, we would like to get less than wholesale pricing. Be enthusiastic with your discussions. Maybe make a little welcome packet thing that kind of goes over your service and shows what you do um, for for your vendors, and that should help you with getting a better discount than this kind of the standard wholesale pricing. Because I mean, the fact of the matter is you're not a wholesaler. You're not reselling these things individually. You're shipping all these things out at once. Make sure that they understand that a subscription box is not a traditional wholesaler, and that might be able to help you get better margins on that. Um,
Couple of questions here on custom packaging. A couple of people have mentioned poor experiences with Northwest Paper Box. Let me just say something about custom packaging. It's hard to work. It's hard to work with these companies. A lot of them. They're old school companies. They're using technology that's decades and decades old. These guys are used to working with big corporate retail clients. This new like wave of small startups that want custom physical packaging printed is so new, and a lot of them aren't really ready for it. So the turnaround times are longer. You do have to be more patient. There's a lot of steps involved. They're just not as quick and rapid as like today's tech companies are with customers. So I mean, you're working with people that have worked at these companies for 20 years, and this whole subscription thing is brand new. All these young startups wanting custom packaging is funny. It's just this never happened before. So a
mhm.
lot of times you do have to be patient with them, but once you can get a partnership established and everything's up and running, it becomes pretty smooth. But yeah, it's not as easy as like setting up your Craigjoy account or any of the other tech services that you use for your business. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to fire away at some of these early questions that we kind of went over. Someone asks, should we factor in operational costs into our COGS? You should. It's not necessarily part of your COGS. It's something that you'd subtract from your gross margins, but definitely factor that into pricing. Is shipping, packaging, third-party software, Cratejoy, other monthly services, i.e., those types of things included in your COGS. Shipping and packing and packaging would be your other costs like platform fees, transaction fees. It's slightly different, but they definitely should be in your equation. They're just not necessarily classified as your cost of goods necessarily, but definitely, you can treat them all as part of the same thing if you like. But definitely include them when you're determining your price. Um, uh, let's see here. So what do you do when you what do you do on pricing if you've already launched but realize you're not making any profit with your pricing? Jameson mentioned this. If you don't have a lot of customers right now, change it now, because if you're not making any money based on your pricing, and it's really difficult for you to procure great products and make a good experience, and maybe you're seeing high churn because of that, you might just need to upgrade up your price. And if you only got 100 customers or so or less, it's not going to you're going to see an effect, obviously, but ultimately it will be for the better, especially if you plan to run this business for longer. Um, Someone mentioned here I may have underpriced because of free shipping. If you do include free shipping, make sure that's factored in your price. I mean, it's definitely been factored into both the Jameson and mine's businesses. If you're going to offer free shipping to people, make sure that you have factored in that $6, $7, $8, $9 cost, whatever it is you're paying for shipping, into your actual sticker price. Okay, so that just kind of cleared out some of these early ones here. So this next one here is. So my subscription costs $79. My COGS, not including customer acquisition, is around 55 to $60. But I don't know how to get my COGS down without reducing the value of the box. Will I be able to get better supplier deals once I have more subscribers, or should I raise my costs slightly? It's really difficult to answer that, I think, because it really depends on what specific things you're sourcing and from where. If you're having a hard time getting your COGS down, it might be because of the volume of your orders. But if you're sitting there and you've only got $15 of margin after your cost of product, and you're not including fulfillment costs or shipping costs in that, then you've got a problem for sure, and you need to raise your price. Um, $15 after the initial close you're buying is just not going to be enough margin for covering operational expenses and other things like that, and especially like customer acquisition. I mean, you want to have at least 10 or 15 bucks probably set aside for that and still profit after that too. Um, do you think that there's a built-in value proposition on a box disposition on box physical size per month and cost? So basically, yeah, I take this answer to mean if your box is small, can it be expensive? And if your box is big, can it be cheap? Um, there probably is. I mean, I don't know. Jameson's box is Yogi Surprise is a pretty small box. He has a jewelry box actually, that is a pretty tiny box, and I mean it's a what is it, like $24 a month, Jameson? Um,
Hmm.
it's a little bit more expensive than some other really small boxes. And I assume that your customers seem happy about it, and they seem, I imagine you get good response from it. I don't think that the box size is inherently tied to your cost.
It
Um,
depends on the niche. I mean, the last thing you want to do is send someone a box that just isn't full. You know what I mean? Like, it's
right.
just, we found that just the weight of the box, how full it is, all those things impact the perception of value they see in your product. So you definitely want to consider all those factors.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really true. With my box, I tried to basically max out the same cubic tier that I was putting my box in. And some months, the products I have, the retail value is high. In fact, one month I had like about $90 of retail value, but the box felt empty. So I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Because even though the retail value is there, like people are gonna be like, look at this and be like, well, this is small stuff. So I chose a different packing material. I kind of like did a couple extra things just to make the box feel a little bit fuller. And I think that's really where that perception comes in. Is just making sure that these people feel like they have a nice curated experience that's wholesome and rewarding. Um, so this next question is, what if you're doing a box on a quarterly or bi-monthly basis? Can you basically charge people more if they're paying less frequently? Um, I would presume so, but I've actually never run a bi-monthly or quarterly subscription. Jameson, you have any insight on that?
No, I've never run one before, but I mean that makes sense. If it's only quarterly, maybe they're willing to pay a higher price, but I have no experience with that.
Yeah, I would assume, it's going to be kind of the same thing that we mentioned with like multi-month commitments. Like the longer that goes by after they haven't been charged, um, when that charge happens, they might be more confused. So, I mean, I'd be cautious. I mean, if you can do bi-monthly, I try to get rebilling as close to each other as they can, just so it becomes kind of more of a regular thing, like people don't forget about it. Um, so do companies that have procurement slash curated boxes tend to be higher priced than companies that manufacture their own offerings? That's a good question. It totally depends, though. I mean, that's just a factor of COGS. I mean, if you're spending $15 making your own products, um, your COGS is going to be the same as if you spent $15 buying other people's products. But it really depends. I mean, if you're a great maker of candles and you have a candle subscription, you might be able to get your costs down really low because you've got some solid connections already, and you've got your molds already, or stuff like that. But I mean, COGS will be COGS. I mean, product cost is always going to equal product cost. So whether you're buying that or making it, it's going to factor in the equation the same way. Um, we have here, what do you recommend for web-based accounting tools? So it's kind of related. I use Zero. I think Jameson also uses Zero. Um, when you're trying to reduce cost by negotiating with vendors, should you tell them that your max price point, or should you tell them lower in an attempt to save money? I mean, I usually say to vendors, this is the most I can pay for this product, and I'm usually pretty honest about it. Sometimes I lower it, like I could maybe pay a little bit more. I mean, that's the art of negotiations, really. You want to um, definitely uh, tell them you don't want to put yourself in a position where you say, at most I can pay this, and then you've given them the most that you can pay, and then they're like, well, we're actually going to need a little bit more, because they're obviously going to push back. I mean, it's tit for tat with the negotiations. So don't give away the cow in the first offer, I guess. Um, um, okay, here's a question, two-part question. Do either of your business models plan on using sub-box platforms as advertising platforms for your suppliers, i.e., try before you buy experience, whereby you offer small samples to try and then send consumers direct to vendors for larger quantities? That's a good question. That's what our entire first business, Conscious Box, was predicated on. Was try before you buy. It was a sample product subscription, so you'd get a box full of like 10 to 20 different natural product samples, and then we actually sold the full size product on our website. Um, uh, so that's a fine model for some things. I personally don't like it because it's harder to get those negotiations done with vendors. I mean, they're being just assailed by hundreds of subscription box companies at this point asking for free samples. I've actually spoken to many vendors, and I'm sure Jameson has too, that have said to me, it's so refreshing to talk to a subscription box company who wants to buy my product. Like, I wouldn't suggest that business model at this point. I actually wrote a piece for Cratejoy a couple months ago called "The Sample Subscription Box Model." Is this business model dead or something like that? Just because it's so fleeting. I think if you're going to be doing that, I wouldn't necessarily even think of your subscription box as your primary means of revenue. It might be like a loss leader for your e-commerce store or something like that. Um, that would be my thoughts and advice. What about you, Jameson? I'm sure you have lots of thoughts here.
No, I mean, I totally agree. I actually wrote a post on why you shouldn't start a sample subscription box. I believe you wrote a similar post. We're
Yeah.
so passionate about it. I mean, look, here's the thing. If you need to source free product, there's a lot of parts of your business that become more complicated. One, you have to scale a sales team, right? The effort it takes to get free product is 100 times harder than it is to buy product, right? At Conscious Box, if we had been purchasing product, we could have still had just one buyer, all the way up to 30,000 subscribers, right? But when we got to that point, I mean, we had like 6 or 7 full-time salespeople, right? So they're just they're not as predictable, they're not as sustainable, they require more resources. It's just not worth it. I think if you want to get free samples, that's fine. But as I said at the beginning of this, plan your business around the potential that you won't be able to get those free samples. Treat the free samples as the cherry on top. Like for example, this month, I actually had a vendor, a PR company, contact me on behalf of one of their brands, and they wanted to donate full-size product to the box, and I said, great, that's awesome, and I was able to put a couple thousand extra dollars in my pocket that month. But it's not something that I rely on, right?
Yeah, I've had like two or three experiences currently with Crossblue where vendors are like, "Hey, I want to give you an extra free sample," and I've been like, "That's awesome!" Like, but I've never once asked someone for a free sample, just because, like Jameson said, I mean, we were at Conchbox, we had a huge sales team. It was painful, it was like if you scale up, another big problem with the sample model, and I'll just, I won't try not to get too ranty about this subject, but if you scale up, you've got 2,000 customers, and you want to give all those customers, 10 products in each box, you have to go find 10 companies who can then give you 2,000 samples. And if you can't find 10 companies who can give you 2,000 samples, you need to go find 20 companies who can give you 1,000 samples each. And then you've got two different variations, potentially more variations of your box each month. That means now you have multiple packing lists. That means that people are now going to be having different product experience. It's going to create customer confusion. It's going to create more work on your side. It's just all around becomes crazy, crazy difficult. I think at our biggest point in Conscious Box, we had something like 20 variations each month. We had gluten,
No, dude, more than
vegan,
that. It got up to
classic
like
boxes,
40
and then
variations.
multiple variations within those. It was just there would be times where I'd walk into the office and Jameson would be sitting in a pile of samples with boxes all around him, and he was trying to figure out what to put in what. And it was, it's just don't do it. Just do not do it. Um, okay,
Yeah.
so some of these other questions here. Let's try to wrap up here. We've got a couple minutes left. Um, should I have the same budget in mind and not spend more on my products each month, or is that something that can vary? It can vary. I mean, I spend about 15 to 20 bucks. I think Jameson spends about the same, but definitely have a cap. Don't spend any more than what you calculate your COGS as. Like I calculate my COGS at $20 for products each month, and every single time I spend less than that, it's just upside for me. So don't spend more than your core calculations, but you can spend less, obviously, especially if you hit your retail value mark or whatever it is your standard is. Um, Any other fulfillment companies to recommend? Northwest Paper Box has been awful in responding to my outreach. It's very frustrating. Uh, Go to subscriptionschool.com and then go into the resources section. There's a couple different leads that we put in there. Northwest River Box is pretty bad with communication, but their quality of work is really great. So if you can get in there and start talking to the right people, it's really worth it. But I totally understand that. I mean, that's feedback we hear a lot about Northwest River Box. So next question. Often a product will have a set MSRP but can be found on Amazon for a lot less. For a value box, do customers complain if your posted MSRP is higher than what they can find the product for? I get this sometimes, but frankly, it's just like, the easy thing to tell a customer is like, hey, I'm not a wholesaler. I'm not buying hundreds of these and then selling them for cheap to other people through Amazon. Like, it's not the same thing. And if you can find it cheaper on Amazon, that might be because it's, used, broken, old. It's just not, we have quality guarantee. These are fresh products made for this service, for this box. And we list the manufacturer's retail price. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You probably won't get many people complaining about it. Are there procurement scripts on Subscription School blog or a different personal blog? Yeah, check out jamesonmorris.com. That's Jameson's personal blog. We've got some good resources on Subscription School too. We have some prompts there, I believe. But probably Jameson's blog is going to have some better content at the time. So if you want to see an example of the packet that we provide to potential companies, go to Subscription School and look under the most recent guide about Prosperly. It's how I built a business in 6 months that's made $50,000 in revenue. There's a little screenshot of the top of the guide that I use, but basically it's just like a PDF that says, here's a picture of my box, here's who I am, and here's what we do for you. It doesn't have to be super crazy. I don't think even Jameson uses one. Is that right? You don't even use a welcome packet anymore at this point, do you?
No.
Yeah. So you don't
No,
really.
I
It's
just
just kind
show
of.
them the money.
Yeah, exactly. So can you talk a little bit more about psychology of pricing? I'm stuck at $29.99, $32.99, and $34.99. I would say I don't. Well, and this person also says I think there's something to be said for saying I'm under $30. If your COGS puts you at $29.99, I would tell you to put your price at $34.99 and then offer a discount, a 10% off for a life discount. That way, people are going to be paying about $30, or maybe you offer a 20% off discount and you price it at $39.99, and so people are actually paying less than $30, but they're also still getting that discount. So, I mean, inflating that price a little bit and then offering the lifetime discount, I don't think it hurts to do that because for both of our boxes, and at least in these cases, we make sure that our retail value is always higher than the price that you pay. So regardless if someone signed up and didn't get that lifetime discount, I can guarantee that they're still going to be satisfied with my product offering, and I'm sure Jameson can guarantee that too. Like doing a lifetime discount has only shown me good results, and I don't know about you, Jameson. What do you think about that? Do you think that inflating your price and offering a lifetime discount can ever be hurtful to your business?
No, I saw the question. You were worried that the higher retail price would scare people off. Um, if you look at if you look at my website or go to one of my landing pages on yogisurprise.com, you'll see I do have the retail price published there, but I have it crossed out with the lower price there. So everyone actually gets the lower price by default. So the way I have it displayed, it shouldn't scare anyone off.
Yeah. Mine's split a little bit differently. I think mine is actually I don't even think I have to look at my website because actually I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't even think you even see the price until you hit the cart page, and in which case the coupon's already been applied. So it's kind of in the same thing where it's like everybody just gets the discount. It's very, very rare for someone to somehow check out probably on either one of our sites and not get that discount. Um, uh, so let's see here. We've got about 10 questions left, so we'll try to power through these here.
Someone asked, I'm just gonna, a lot of these are off topic, but we're just gonna try to do them. Someone asked, should you offer customer returns? Yes, offer them. But what I do is I say, look, you can send it back for a refund, but you've got to package everything back up. Nothing's got to be used. It's got to be a new condition, and they have to pay to send it back, right? And so you have sort of a good faith policy, but a lot of times people will not put the effort into packing them back and packing them up and sending them back. So I do offer it.
Yeah. Yeah, if I do too. If someone, for some reason renewed and they didn't want it, I'll just tell them to refuse it, and if they don't refuse it, to do the same thing, and then they usually just keep it. Um, okay, so what parameters do you budget for affiliate partner sales and your CPA forecast? It really depends on the affiliate. I usually don't offer affiliates more than $5 or $10 per sign up, but it also depends on your product cost. That Coca for me basically is worth it. Um, I don't know if you have any other insight you want to add to that, Jameson.
Yeah, yeah, it really depends on the affiliate. I'll pay all the way up to what I can afford. I usually don't like to do deals that take me more than, a few months to break even. I think about it the same way I think about any other customer acquisition costs, right? So I'm willing to pay, anywhere from basically $10 to $25, and then I'll end up profitable in the second month. So I don't think about affiliates or partners any differently than I think about any of my other customer acquisition channels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so fulfillment center, that was Northwest Paper Box. What's your blog? It's jamesonmorris.com, and mine is jesserichardson.com. I'll send that over to you so you can actually read it. Um, okay, how do you negotiate for below wholesale pricing? I think we kind of went over this, but make the value proposition to them that you're doing a good service for them and that you're not a traditional wholesaler. I mean, you're not retailing these things in a store where you're making a profit off their you know
Yeah, always make it clear that you're not reselling the product.
yeah, yeah, definitely make that very clear. Um, okay. So here we go. So how do you get customers back who cancel? That's a good question, Mr. Webster. We do a lot of remarketing. I actually just got 3 or 4 customers this morning from emailing my canceled list. So I export my customers who have canceled each month. I pull them in my MailChimp, and then I reconcile that email list to if they might have subscribed, and then I send them a special offer or I send them a reminder. And you can also put them through like a drip campaign where they get 3 or 4 emails over the next 30 days to entice them to come back. Um, so I was thinking of purchasing samples until volume made sense for vendors to supply them for free. That's interesting. I think it's going to be difficult for you to go from purchasing samples then to asking them for free. I think you'd have to have a pretty strong data offering to people if you were planning on doing this free sample thing. I mean, we got a ton of feedback at Conscious Box. We had people rating the products. We enticed people to rate the products by getting discounts on full size products, and we passed that feedback along to vendors. It became a very big operation creating those packets for vendors. You know, we really just discourage the use of samples. I mean, you might as well, you might as well just have a higher price box. And sell fewer of those and have less work than a lower price box that relies on samples and have a lot more work. There's this really interesting. I can't remember if it was a cartoon I saw or what it was, but it was this kind of this picture of this kid at a lemonade stand, and it said lemonade $500. And it shows him talking to his friend, and he says, "Well, I want to just get done with this, for the summer." And the kid has the right idea. If he sells one lemonade for $500, then he doesn't sell any more lemonade for the rest of the summer. Like, don't if you want to do samples just because it will give you a lower price box and you can get more customers, I don't think that's a very good justification. You might as well make a really great product that you're paying for products for in procurement, and have better customers who pay you more and have a better experience than trying to finagle your way around a sample model. Yeah, that's what I'd say about that. Um, um, okay. A lot of these other ones are marketing related. Do you see any other ones, Jameson, that you want to jump on?
Someone asked, best way to find vendors to come on board? Is it through online research?
Yep.
Um, yeah, I just walk into grocery stores and I'm taking pictures all the time. For Yogi Surprise, usually Whole Foods works. I'll walk in there. Any natural food store, I'll walk in there. It's just a habit of mine to just snap photos anytime I see something cool, and then I just go and contact the vendor directly. If you're having to do like tons of painstaking research to find the products, maybe you chose the wrong niche. I mean, I always recommend choosing niches where you're passionate about those things and you're knowledgeable about them, and it's part of your lifestyle already because it makes everything easier, including product procurement. So.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, validated. Okay, I've got another answer here. So, how many months ahead are you on setting up your next box? I've personally got December procured, um, part of January and part of February. Um, I think Jameson's probably not the same boat. I think he's got a couple months out too. Once you get a good procurement system going, it's going to be pretty easy for you to get ahead with your work, I think. I usually spend about one full day, I would say about 8 to 10 hours a month procuring for that month. So if I just devote myself a week, I could probably procure out 3 or 4 months. The reason why I usually don't do that is because I don't know where my numbers are going to be at. So I'll reach out to vendors and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this at this month. I'd love to work with you. What kind of cost can you provide me for this range of customers? It'll probably be around 300 or 400 or something like that. Give them a range, and then we kind of work from costs there. But I find that you don't really need to give, at least in my niche, which is a pretty production intense niche. I usually don't need to procure products any later than 4 to 5 weeks out. I want to give my vendors at least a month, a little bit more than a month to produce other goods and have it shipped to me. Um, Sell yourselves. Why would you say using Cratejoy is smarter than Subly or one of the other subscription platform services? That's a good question, and I appreciate the challenge. Cratejoy is in terms of technology, is probably the most advanced of any of the dedicated subscription platform services. The team at Cratejoy is completely focused on subscription boxes. This is all that they think about. They're completely obsessed. And in fact, I don't think that Jameson or myself would work at Cratejoy if we didn't respect how passionate they are about this business model. I mean, we've been doing this for 5+ years, and I would not be using this for my own business if I didn't believe in it. I've used PayPal and a static site, Magento, Chargeify and WordPress, and Cratejoy just makes it very, very simple for people who are not super tech savvy and who want an all-in-one solution. There are certain things about Cratejoy that should be improved and that they are working on, but compared to Subly or other subscription platform services that I've seen, or plugins like the WooCommerce subscription plugin, like it's going to be much easier. You're not going to need an intense integration, and you're not going to need a developer at your side at all times. What do you think about that, Jameson? You got any sales pitch to this question here?
Well, you're in a Cratejoy webinar. I don't know if Subly offers webinars like this. So.
Yeah, boom, there you go. That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, Cratejoy's got experts working for them who are happy to share their knowledge, which is pretty unique for any industry. Okay, so you know, to we still got quite a few questions here. I don't think we have much time to answer any more of them. Uh, we don't drop ship. We have a warehouse that does fulfillment for us. Mary, regarding the 3 to 6 month gift subscriptions, you have to manually do that. You can write into support at cratejoy.com and they can explain how to do that. It's not natively built into it, but it can be done. Um, uh, so let's see here. I would describe the value proposition of my business as a mix between monetary value and discovery, and I would probably assume that's kind of the same thing for Jameson's. I mean, he's got a very good niche, the yoga products. So those people want to find those products, and so his value proposition is very clear to those people. It's like a yoga retreat in a box every single month, and what yogi doesn't want that? So, what about beauty samples? Are they cheap to buy? Beauty samples are definitely the cheaper ones to buy, but I still, maybe buy samples if you want to add a kind of little extra kicker in your box, but it really depends on your value proposition to customers. I still think that samples are just generally a bad idea. Is 10% good, or are you sure I try to negotiate more of a discount off wholesale? 10% is not bad. I try to get down to about half of wholesale or cost. That's what I shoot for. Anything specific to consider when using Cratejoy outside of the U.S.? Jameson actually had a really good point in another webinar, or it was maybe just another question that we had with another vendor. It was a Canadian vendor who was like, "Oh, it's really expensive for me to ship inside the United States. What should I do?" And the answer was, you should just use a fulfillment center inside the United States and have all your products shipped there, and then have them ship out of your fulfillment center, so you don't have to deal with international shipping. If you're going to be shipping inside the United States primarily, that's a great idea. If you're going to be shipping in the UK exclusively, I can't offer too much advice since I don't have a lot of experience there. Jameson, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
No, I mean internationally though, if you're running a subscription locally in the UK, just make sure that the payment, Stripe, the payment processor is compatible in the United Kingdom. It's fine. I'm not sure that like the UK has a subsidized postal service like we do. So I think in some cases you'll if you run your business in the US, you'll be able to experience lower costs of goods. But yeah, I mean, Cratejoy's technology and the payment processors are totally compatible, so there's not a whole lot of difference.
Hmm. Okay, well that looks pretty good. I'm gonna type out some of these other answers here. I just realized we didn't shoot any polls, so for those of you who are still here, I'm gonna shoot a couple polls up right here. So just answer them really quickly, just to give us some more information about who you are, and then also too when this webinar will end, we're also going to there'll also be an exit survey. We'd really appreciate it if you answered the questions there. We realize we went a little bit over time, but hopefully we've given you guys lots of good and actionable information. It looks like we've got about 60% voted on that. This first one's just what stage are you at in launching your subscription business? So yeah, just really helping us understand where you're at in your own business. We've got about 3 out of 4 people voted. If you didn't vote, not a worry. I'm gonna go ahead and close this poll here. I want to launch another poll really quickly before you go. What price were you thinking about before the webinar? So if you were thinking about a subscription box price and you were, you thought you had a price in mind, what was it? And then before I launch this next poll, I'm going to ask you why. So what price range were you thinking about? Was it going to be a really cheap box? Was it going to be a really expensive box? What did you think your subscription was going to be? And as we let these next couple answers come in, we'll see if we can answer any more of these questions for you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close this poll. If you didn't vote, like I said, that's okay. Last poll here. I just want to see here too. Have you tried calculating your costs before this webinar? So no, you didn't, but yes, I only guessed. You just completely just was like, hey, I assume products will cost me this much, or I assume shipping will cost me this much. Or did you actually do some research with the specifics of cost for your subscription box? So there's definitely no right answer here. We're just looking for where your headspace was at coming into this webinar. Okay, perfect. So just to kind of close everything up here, this webinar is going to be available online to watch on Subscription School probably by Monday of this next week. This live show is also going to be available. We'll also include any other resources that we think that will be helpful. You just go to subscriptionschool.com and go under the video section, and you'll be able to find this. We'll probably send out an email update as well. Go to Subscription School. Make sure you join that email list if you're not already on it, because then you'll get first invites to webinars like these. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Thanks everybody for participating.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions, come to facebook.com/Cratejoy or facebook.com/subscription school. Ask us questions. We're happy to answer it. And then, let us know at the end of this webinar here. Tell us what you want to hear about next. We've got a great procurement webinar coming up in the first week of December. And please join that if you're want to learn more about wholesale pricing and how to negotiate. We're going to go over that in detail because we know that's something that's a lot of you have been asking about. If you didn't get your question answered, yeah, like I said, feel free to go post those questions on our Facebook walls, and we'll get some answers to you shortly. Otherwise, thanks again for joining us, and you guys have a great rest of your week, and happy holidays.
See you guys.